wait, a minute, you could start a minute early.
It is now 7. I'd like to call this December meeting of Louisa County Planning Commission to order. Ms. Johnson, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Barlow?
Here.
Mr. Brooks?
Here.
Mr. Painting?
Here.
Mr. Disasway?
Here.
Mr. Dickerson?
Here.
Mr. Cross?
Here.
Mr. Goodwin?
George from here.
Mr. Goodwin, can you hear us?
Yes, I hear.
Excellent, thank you.
Mr. Percy?
Here.
Mr. Purcell?
Well, please stand for the invocation led by Commissioner Dickerson, followed by the pledge led by Commissioner Quarles.
Let us pray. Father God, we thank you so much for Louisa County, all those who came before us, and all those who are here now working hard to preserve Louisa County. Help us to leave it better than we found it for future generations to use. In your most holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved.
And a second? Moved and seconded. I'd like to make one change to the agenda under item 8, discussion, to add a second item for discussion of proposed revision to the fee schedule for Louisa County. Is that acceptable to the motioner and seconder?
It is.
Yes.
Any other changes to the agenda? Ms. Johnson, can we have a roll call or a roll call to vote on the agenda?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Painting?
Yes.
Mr. Disasway?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes,
Mr. Kersey?
Yes.
All right, the agenda is approved. Next up is approval of Planning Commission minutes from the October 9th meeting found on packet pages 2 through 6. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
Move. Second.
Moved and seconded. Are there any comments on the minutes from the October meeting? Very well, hearing none. Ms. Johnson, can we have a roll call vote on approving the minutes?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Painting?
Yes.
Mr. Disasway?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
yes,
Mr. Kersey?
Yes.
Very well, the minutes of the October meeting are approved. Next up is consent agenda. We do not have a consent agenda for December, so we'll move on to public address. Public address is the time during the meeting when the public can come up and address the Planning Commission on any items that are not a public hearing this evening. I'm going to open the public address period. Public address period is open. Any members of the public who'd like to speak? Very well. Seeing none, we'll close the public address period. Public address period is closed. And we'll move on to unfinished business. I believe the only unfinished business that we have right now is the comprehensive plan update, which is underway. Meetings are underway. And Mr. Kuhn, would you like to give us a brief update on that?
Give you a snapshot in time right here.
Very good.
So as of 7:03 tonight, we have 981 responses to the comprehensive plan survey. We had the first open house yesterday at Moss Knuckles. Some commissioners came, we had some board members stop by, and residents come. We do have a postcard that was mailed out to every residential household that receives postage. It was about 15,500, 600, something like that. We got the information from Commissioner Revenue. So that went out, and we will have 4 more in January. The ones that are advertised right now is January 7th, 14th, and 21st. So it's a Wednesday, each Wednesday. And then it'll be Trevilian's, Jewett, and then we have Central Virginia Assembly of God off 522 in the Mountain Road District. And then the last one will be the 28th, figuring out the exact location, looking middle school, TJ, something, another center of the county one to kind of cap off the last conversation. Survey will close at the end of January. What we plan on doing is having staff, we will work on kind of a, percentages report. This is what we've gotten. And then bring it to you guys probably that February. Just this is the update that we have, and then kind of do the same thing with the board, and then start moving forward with comprehensive plan updates as well as some zoning ordinance changes or updates, things that kind of included in there. And the comprehensive plan, I think we'll have probably in January. Whoever ends up being on the comprehensive plan work group committee will work with the board comprehensive plan group, and then kind of move through that. So we're looking tentatively June, July for probably a good draft to come to you guys. Maybe even earlier, just depends on the results that we get. So.
Questions for Mr. Kuhn? All right, thank you. Completes unfinished business. Next up is public hearing. First public hearing we have tonight is on the Green Springs AFD proposed addition. Ms. Breakville.
Yes, good evening, and it's nice to meet you all. This is my first time before you, so I'm excited to be here. So tonight we have a parcel that is requesting to join the Green Springs Agricultural and Forestal District. It is a 20.934 acre parcel located on State Route 208, which is Courthouse Road. This parcel is 2.4 miles from the Green Springs Historic District. There are roughly 3 districts in that area that it could have joined. They are joining the district under the agricultural significant definition, which we haven't done many in the county under agricultural significance, as it was a statutory change that was done recently, and we haven't had many parcels join through it or join that way since the addition. It does allow parcels to join if it's deemed under the LESA system to be agriculturally significant to that district. So in this case, the soil type is the same as majority of the Green Springs, and they produce horses, which is also a large commodity produced in the Green Springs. So that's why they chose Green Springs over the other 2 districts, because they were more similar to Green Springs, and there was no district within 1 mile of their location. Amy did appear at the agricultural and forestal meeting. However, she was unable to come tonight. She is extremely excited to preserve land in the county. And the Agriculture, Forestal, and Rural Preservation Committee recommended approval of this agricultural and forestal district. So I'll stand for questions at this time.
Are there any questions for Ms. Breakville before we open the public hearing?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Flores.
Ms. Breakville, this, part of this parcel is located in Patrick Henry? Is that what I'm reading?
Yes, it is in the Patrick Henry District. There are other parcels of the Green Springs Agricultural and Forestal District located in Patrick Henry as well. The district is substantially larger than just the Green Springs voting district.
And they're joining the Green Springs agriculture, okay. All right. Good for now.
Any other questions? Very well. Thank you, Ms. Breakville.
Thank you.
So I'm going to open the public hearing on this. Public hearing is open. Generally, the first speaker in the public hearing is the applicant, and I believe the applicant is not here tonight, so we'll not be hearing from them. Would any member of the public like to speak on this? Very well. Seeing no member of the public here to speak on this, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed, and we'll bring it back to the commission for discussion. Any questions or discussions on this item?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brooks.
I guess page 21. scroll through. So this piece is sitting across from a growth area, correct? Guess I'm addressing this to you, Ms. Brakefield.
Yes, so the piece is next to a growth area. It is not in a growth area.
Right across the road is where the growth area ends at.
Yes.
And it's 2.5 miles to the core,
So it's 2.4 miles from a core of the Green Springs, yes.
and that's the closest thing to this.
So there are 3 agricultural and forestal districts roughly the same distance. One's, maybe a couple feet closer, but it is the one that it meets the definition for agriculturally significant. It's the district that is the closest in agricultural significance because of soil type and animal production.
It just seems to be a little bit of a concern to me that that's a long ways away from a mile.
Well, but the distance is not relevant anymore under the statute. It allows for the 200-acre core, 1 mile from the core, or a no distance requirement if it's deemed agriculturally significant. And in this case, it does meet the statutory definition. So distance was not removed. It is still there, but we do have this other option of agricultural significance.
It also says significant land, and this is 20 acres.
So we have parcels as small as 0.3 acres in agricultural and forestal districts right now, and 10 acres. And so we do believe that preserving all land in the county is important, and so 20 acres would be significant.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you,
Chair.
Chairman.
Mr. Quarles?
Getting back on the language, significant. If we have land that's less than an acre that's significant, where's the definition there? I mean, where's the break, in other words?
Well, so the legal definition of agricultural significance is in your packet on page 10. And so it just means land that has recently or historically produced agricultural and forestal products, is suited for agricultural or forest production, or is considered appropriate to be retained for agricultural and forestal production based on a criteria. So we would say that land is important to be preserved if it is historically and currently being used for agricultural production. In this case,
So
it's horse production.
listening to this, because they have a horse and because the soil is similar, which it may be anywhere in the county, this quantifies this. This is the reason why this is considered significant.
So they don't just have one horse, they're actively involved in thoroughbred breeding. So they are actively involved in the production of horses. And it would meet the legal definition under the Virginia Code. And it has been reviewed by council, and they agreed that it met the legal definition.
Mr. Chair, I'm good. For now. I'm okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Very well. Since this is in the Patrick Henry District, Mr. Quarles, we would be,
It's kind of conflicting.
we would be,
It's Green Springs AD, but it's located in my district, and
I understand.
you're looking for a vote here.
It's
I'm sure you will.
It's a location.
I'm sure you-
It'd be good to have everybody involved in it too, it would, yes. So, we would, Chair would be looking for a motion.
I'll comment. I have a little difficulty seeing as the distance, and I understand that where it meets the requirement, it is 2+ miles away from the district that it's located in a district, but it's annexing another district, another forestal. And that doesn't, I can't get my arms around that.
So I will say that there are Patrick Henry AFD parcels in the Green Springs district. just for clarification. So it's not, just because it has that name doesn't necessarily mean that it's wholly in that district. I mean, South Anna is in Patrick Henry as well. So there is a lot of overlap between where the districts are located versus like the voting districts.
But it doesn't join it. I mean, it doesn't, I can see if it was joining it but it's not joining it. It's away from that district. So it's like, okay, well, what is that distance of significance? Because if they're in the mountain district, are they still, close enough that would work? That just seems odd to me.
So Ms. Brakefield, and I agree with, or I understand Commissioner Quarles' hesitance, and you and I had this discussion last night, because a lot of what we have done in the past have been operating under the rules that have been traditional for AFDs prior to 2022, I believe it was, when this
Yes, sir.
new rule about soil came in, significant agricultural soil activity, that sort of thing. When we put our land in AFD, we were still, I was measuring on the computer, can we make it under a mile, or are we going to be close enough? So my understanding is that although the mile is still one criteria that can be used, because of legislative action in 2022, we now have another criteria, and all of what's going on for this particular application falls under the criteria of soil type and agricultural significance. So it's not resting on distance anymore. We don't have to rely on distance. That's a separate method that can be used, but is not being brought in as the reason why this is joining an ag and forestal district.
Mr. Chairman, if I will, it makes it very broad if it's saying the soil type is the same, because that could be the same throughout the whole county.
Well, you'll notice the map on page 19 of the soil types, and I'll have to say that I don't think that I could have survived if I relied on soil type, because I don't think the soil type is quite as good where I am, that it becomes significant. We were able to get in the 1 mile thing, but these maps, if I recall correctly, these maps were from the 1930s. They were
1974.
74. Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm thinking about a different one that was done by the CCC.
What I'm seeing,
But these soil maps, the whole county was characterized according to soil type and productivity from soil type.
Mr. Chairman, what I'm seeing in this map on page 19 is that every soil type that's present, all but one soil type that's present in the county is represented in that parcel.
I would say for a good bit of the county, we have agriculturally significant soil here.
I'm having a hard time with that,
Well,
because it does represent, I mean, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 different soil types there. And you probably have 5 soil types in the whole county.
I think
Well,
there are more
according
than
to
that.
I do believe I don't know the number, so if you look on page 8 of your packet, there's an overarching map from 1974, that's the general soil map for the county, and that's the map that the decision was based on when you look at the types of soils, and so it's because it's the Nasom-Tatum Manteo Soil Association. That's primarily, when you overlay that with parts of the district, that's the largest amount.
And then also, just point of clarification, the reason why these changes happen is ag and forestal districts, the intent is to help preserve land, rural land in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and that 1 mile buffer is very restrictive. So this is an alternative to allow, this is a perfect example. They are not within 1 mile of any district, but they're, like Maggie said, 2.4, a couple feet, give or take, to 3 different districts. So essentially, now with the state code updating, we have an opportunity and an owner would like to preserve their land for at least a 10-year period, and we have the opportunity to allow that to happen because of the changes to the state code. And that's what Maggie and council have reviewed it and deemed that it's agriculturally significant to meet the code. And we've got an owner that'd like to preserve this 20 acres for at least 10 years, which is ultimately the intent of the Virginia Code language and update.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brooks?
I'm where Mr. Quarles is. I'm kind of confused by what's being said. It's based on this, we can just go anywhere now if the soil is right and say that's what we're gonna do, but I'm looking at something that says we're supposed to be within 1 mile and significant land. And that's in the, whatever page that is, page 9. 15.2-4305. Needs to be within 1 mile of the boundary of the core, contains agriculturally and forestally significant land. 20 acres doesn't seem significant to me with what we've done in the past for a forest area, forest and ag district. And the other thing that bothers me is being right across from a growth area. Isn't that setting somebody up for an issue down the road?
So I can't speak to that, but I can speak to the definition. So it says, if the local governing body finds in consultation with the advisory committee and planning commission that the parcel not part of the core or within 1 mile of the core contains agriculturally significant and forestal land. So that part you were reading, it's really, we need to focus on the not part of the core, not within 1 mile. Like as or Chairman Disisway had said, this is a third option. So we have the core, we have the 1 mile, we have the agricultural significance. Acreage is really a discussion of you all. I would say personally, I believe 20 acres is significant. We need to save all the land we can in Louisa County to maintain the rural nature and continue with the goal of the comp plan. But I do think that this is legally valid as council has determined and does meet the state code criteria.
I'm hearing it, I'm just not.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Quarles?
I can't, there's too many spider webs here.
Okay.
I see that there's, I get the intent, but with any intent, restructuring the language so that it fits, that's what it seems like it's doing here. So we've gone from the 1 mile to soil similarity, but the thing about the soil is that there's soil like that everywhere within this map that I can see.
Just point of clarification, this is not a change from Louisa County. This is Virginia State Code that has changed that language.
Okay.
So we haven't changed the evaluation criteria. That's what the state code is. But
Respectfully, Mr. Coons, I didn't say that it's something we made up here.
You had said we had changed the criteria. That's why I just want a point of clarification. But if you don't think it's necessary, you can always make a recommendation for denial.
Yeah, I can't, the way that this is kind of convoluted, I can't support that. I couldn't make a recommendation for that.
Mr. Barlow, thank you.
Question for, so I'll have a better understanding of this. This is 2.5 miles or whatever it is away from the core, but that parcel, in other words, it doesn't have any impact on land that is between that parcel and the core. The impact would be for this particular parcel.
Yes, sir.
So even though you've now pulled the core, I mean, basically, that parcel is now in the ag district, it doesn't impact any of the land between that parcel and the core.
That is
I'm asking
that is correct. It also doesn't form a core, so it wouldn't create a new core because the core is 200 acres and it's 20. or 20.9. So it wouldn't create a new core, and it would not impact any landowners between the parcel and the core.
One more question.
Mr.
So
Baldwin.
it doesn't move the core out, so another parcel that happened to be within quarter mile of that parcel is still gonna be 2.75 miles away from the core.
Well, and at that point, it would likely align more with Yanceyville or South Anna or a different district that it is agriculturally significant toward. And we would encourage them to want to join those districts because they would be closer to one of those districts than Green Springs.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, it's that particular parcel that wants to preserve its land, whatever, and get the significance of being in a core, but it doesn't impact any other parcels around.
No, sir, it does not.
'Cause, I mean, this is completely different than anything we've looked at, so
It is.
that's kind of what I was curious about.
In fact, if this is, and obviously it's where the Commonwealth is taking us as an option, and if we want to preserve land, get serious about that, I would even wonder if the Ag and Forestal District might consider whether or not we need individual district names, because instead of looking at cores and distances, I mean, anything that's 200 acres could be a core, whether it had a name or whatever, and you're either within a mile of that, or you would meet a different criteria. So that may be a consideration for Ag and Forestal District. I don't know, but that's their business. We'll deal with our business. It just struck me.
Mr. Chair.
So, Mr. Quarles, we will, go ahead.
That's more in line with what I would be thinking. Rather than name it to a different district, if it was part of a, I don't know, county-wide thing, then that makes more sense to me. I mean, I think we all share the same thoughts about preserving land, but it just seems weird to me that we've made these exclusions, these different ways that we can jump rope over here, and then we can do this over here, and there's many ways to win. And I just think with any rule that you set up, you have guidelines. If it doesn't meet this guideline, then now we're going to do it this way, and that's kind of weird to me, if that makes sense.
I understand, and I'll say, I'm not sure when the last, we've had some additions, but I don't think we've had an addition that's invoked this particular rule since it came out. So that's probably why, why we're all scratching our head a little bit, saying, how do we get here? But,
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Goodwin.
thank you. I think the comprehensive plan wants us to preserve rural character of the county. The board has just taken significant action to preserve ag and forestry land. This is not our change. This is a change in the state code that allows us to preserve a piece of land, regardless of what it's named, or regardless of how much acreage is there. It suits our needs, the two things that I cited earlier, and it falls within the criteria that the General Assembly has laid out for us. I understand everybody's questions because it's the first time this has come through, but it seems like it's coming through in our favor and not working against what we're trying to do locally. So I don't have a problem with voting for this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. Any other?
Just one
Mr.
quick
Brooks?
comment. I mean, it looked like to me we need to change what we're saying in our ordinance. To me, is in conflict with what the state is saying. Or there's confusion about it all being used to create. It's useless in my mind's eye to say a 1 mile boundary anymore. you could, you can just pop it any way you want it. If that's what we're okay with, then
But, well, so what are you proposing that we do here?
if you don't need a 1 mile distance in between it, then we need to remove it out of the ordinance.
Well, this is a state code, so if you want to take that up with the
Well,
legislature
there's
this
nothing
year,
we,
that's
well,
fine.
it's, but then you're saying you don't need it in a certain case.
They're saying there's several different ways you can do business. That's one way of doing business,
So any one of the three,
anyone,
Yes, yes, sir, that is correct.
any one of the three.
yes.
That's correct.
Why would, Mr. Chair,
Mr. Quarles?
why would the 1 mile be in there then if it doesn't, if it's insignificant? It's not, I mean, I don't see it.
I would have to take that up with the legislature myself. I don't really know why they
So you're saying
decided
if
to
the
keep
so-
that in there, but they decided to keep that in there.
If the soil wasn't similar and the production of the area wasn't similar, by it being the horse industry, then you could use the 1 mile? Is that what the way that's?
Yes, that is correct.
So the thing about it sometimes is assemblages, where you'll have certain individuals will have land and then roads or things split it, and then now you've got a divided piece of property that by no fault of the farmer, there's a road or something that goes across. Now you've got different parcels that are separated and not contiguous. It just gives, like you said, additional options that it might be 3 or 4 parcels that the totality is 700 acres, but you got one of those itty bitty little acreage that just, you know, just the nature of life when things change and things get added, that it's a way to just account for everything. But that's ultimately, like I said, the whole goal of this is help preserve ag.
But that would be similar if that was owned by the same people. But the area between the discussed area, the discussed property, and the core is not owned by the same people. It's different.
And the benefit is that normally if you have a core 200 plus acres, you're going to have similar properties or production in the near vicinity, but you might not have the adjacent property owner that wants to join an ag and forestry district and preserve the rural nature, but you may have, you know, the next property down or whatever that wants to join. And ultimately, if you get a substantial amount of people join, now you get to preserve an entire district that looks a similar way, and you're help preserving that rural nature. So that's what the whole intent is. And it, like I said, with the state code change, all it's really done is it allows more people to join that might not meet that 1 mile criteria, especially when you look at different counties that have much larger parcels than we do acreage-wise. Because, you know, if you've got 1,000 acres and 250 acres next to it, and then you start going, a mile gets eaten up real quick if 1 or 2 property owners don't want to join.
It just, Mr. Chair, it just seems like, Mr. Cronin, it seems like Gordon, Commissioner Brooks said earlier, it seems like being that close to a growth area, it might stimulate some sort of conflict later on.
Based on our review, there's no reason to think that would occur. It's not affecting any adjacent or neighboring properties. It's only for this individual parcel that they want to preserve their land. And what the agricultural district would end up doing, I'm sorry.
Mr. Goodwin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if I interrupted somebody. I thought you were through, Mr. Coons. With respect to the growth area, the Planning Commission and the board delineated the growth areas that they wanted. Once again, if we've got an across-the-road situation where someone wants to take it out of development, to me, that also works in our favor because it keeps that growth area from creeping out via rezoning and CUP. So we're actually keeping the growth areas where we said we want them to be.
But like I said, in staff's review as well, there's no reason, if someone wanted to develop the property, what future land use maps got it as low-density residential across, there's nothing that would impact that use across the road in the growth area by this property being in an ag forestal district.
In fact, by putting the property in ag and forestal, depending on the type of agriculture that's done on the property, you preserve the farmer's right to have whatever if across the road they decide to put in a bunch of housing and the people in the houses don't like the smell of agriculture or
Exactly.
whatever.
It's in an ag
preserves the
forestal.
farmer's right to do what he's doing, which is a really good thing. So it's greatly beneficial to agriculture here to do that.
And just to, there are several other agricultural and forestal districts that have parcels that adjoin existing growth areas. There are parcels in the Beaver Dam Creek Agricultural and Forestal District, other parcels in the Green Springs Agricultural and Forestal District, and the Yanceyville District that adjoin existing growth areas.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Dickerson.
I think, like most things that come out of Richmond, this is murky and not clear and probably needs refining. But it does give us another tool to preserve land in the county, so I would be for this application.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Painting.
Ms. Brakefield, what would be the benefits to the landowner to have their land in this preservation?
So, in an agricultural and forestal district, the landowner voluntarily gives up their right to develop, for a 10-year period. And they also would qualify for land use if they don't already have land use. It's a statutory benefit.
Oh, I see.
They would it's simply their way of saying, we voluntarily choose to preserve agricultural land for the purpose of agriculture. We'll talk later tonight about an initiative that the county's potentially looking at adding that would go with ag and forestal districts, but at this point, it's simply them saying, we believe in the power of agriculture, we believe in the power of preservation, and we want to preserve our land for the future of Louisa County.
So this would have no impact over anybody else?
Not anyone else's actions, just their own. They would be strictly developing, like, they could build another barn or an agricultural structure, but they couldn't build another dwelling or something like
Gotcha.
that.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Brakefield, I do believe also one of the benefits is that if you are in ag and forestal, then it's much more difficult for a locality to take adverse possession for any kind of utility that
I
might
believe that is
want to
correct
cross
as
you.
well.
And
I was going to say yes. So any utility easements, SEC reviewings, filings, so transmission lines or things like that. There are a lot of back-end stuff that if you're just asking a property owner, well, what do you get from it, that you probably wouldn't know, but when people are deciding, like you said, utility routes and things like that, they are highly taken into account.
Yeah, so it's a little more protection for that sort of thing for the landowner. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Quarles?
the last bit of information was handy.
Very good.
And I imagine transmission lines going through somebody's thing without their permission. Being as it is close to a growth area, that probably would be a problem. So I would make a recommendation that we move forward with this. Move forward with this to the Board of Supervisors for approval.
I understand we have a recommendation to recommend to the board approval of the amendment to the land development regulations for addition into the Green Springs Ag and Forestal District. Do we have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Very well, Ms. Johnson, can we have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Brooks?
Yes.
Mr. Payne?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Cross?
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin?
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Person?
Yes.
Very good. The motion passes. That completes the public hearings for this evening. I don't have anything tonight under new business. Ms. Buckler, we don't have no new business. So we'll move on to discussion. First item under discussion is a presentation on land preservation initiative. Ms. Brakefield.
Yes, so y'all get to spend the whole evening with me. Bear with me if I have to get some water. I've had a little bit of a cough this week. So tonight we're going to talk about the Louisa Land Preservation Initiative. So I have one. Thank you. Yes, ma'am. Which is a proposed initiative to look at options for rural preservation in Louisa County. To start tonight, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, as I have not met most of you. I have met a couple of you, but I look forward to working with all of you in the future. So my name is Maggie Louise Brakeville. This is a picture of my family from the State Fair in 2022 when we had the Reserve Champion registered breeding ewe, and it was a big deal, huge day for my family. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. So I am from a commercial cattle, show, pig, and quarter horse operation in northwest Louisiana. I'm a Louisiana native. Grew up showing livestock and rodeoing, so I competed in the barrels, poles, and the goat tying. We rodeoed in Texas High School Rodeo and 4 States High School Rodeo, and then competed in Louisiana showing livestock, where I primarily showed market lambs, market goats, and cattle. Showed a few pigs, but pigs were never my favorite. If you've been to the county fair, you know. So I went on to Louisiana Tech University, where I studied agricultural business and received minors in business administration and plant science. After that, I stayed at Louisiana Tech, where I received an MBA before going on to the University of Kansas, where I received a Juris Doctorate. So a little bit about my career journey. While I was in college, I knew ag policy was my heart and my soul. I had known that since I was a small child, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But while I was in Kansas, while I was in college, I got the opportunity to work for the Senate Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry, primarily working on the Farm Bill. And I got to see the in-depth working of the federal government as well as farm programs. Particularly, one of the programs we worked on was CRP. So I got to see conservation programs in practice and learned the power of preservation and conservation. While in law school, I worked for the Kansas Department of Agriculture, where I worked in both the policy side and the legal side. So I was a legal clerk as well as a political liaison to the state legislature and the governor's office, working with the Office of Rural Prosperity. So bringing preservation as well as agribusiness to rural Kansas. Once I left the Department of Agriculture, or once I got barred, I don't want to get ahead of myself. Once I got barred, I became general counsel or staff attorney to the Animal Health Commissioner, working in foreign animal disease. So my legal specialty was primarily for large animal disease, cattle disease, and then went on to work for U.S. Cattle Trace as their general counsel, where I worked with a national nonprofit to create a traceability system for the U.S. cattle industry. So that's using big data to track cattle from birth to packer in the event of a foreign animal disease. But what brought me to Louisa, and how did I get here? So when I flew in for my interview a few months ago, back in August, I had never been to this part of Virginia. I'd been to Northern Virginia, as I lived and worked in D.C., but I had never been to this part of Virginia. But I was one day just looking for jobs because I was interested in doing something different, and I came across a posting on Indeed for a position, and it was a long title, as you will see in a minute, but it sounded fascinating, and it sounded like a position that I was made for. I remember telling my grandma, I was like, I think God wrote that job description, and I feel that way even more every day. But when I was looking at that job description, what stood out to me was the agricultural preservation piece. So let me tell you a story. Imagine a 10-year-old little girl in your life, whether it be your daughter, your granddaughter, maybe a cousin if you don't have children, who had grown up in production agriculture from birth until about 10 years old. Her family owned a homestead farm of about 80 acres where they had, the majority of the barns and the facilities, but they leased everything else. Imagine that same little girl's family losing every lease parcel in the course of 1 year. Imagine your daughter or granddaughter having to take her favorite cattle to the sale barn and say goodbye. That was my childhood. My family lost our farm well, we didn't lose the 80 acres, but we lost our lease ground when I was 10 years old. I took my favorite Simmental cow, her name was Boo Boo, I'd had her since I was like 5, to the sale barn. And that is a memory that will stay with me forever. Those parcels that we cut hay on, ran cattle on, worked cattle with our horses on, would go out and rope on like Mr. Penning's daughter, those parcels today are neighborhoods. Every single parcel that my family farmed in Bossier Parish, Louisiana today is a neighborhood. So when I saw the job posting, it touched my heart in a way that it just felt perfect. It felt like I was meant to come to Louisa. I remember telling my mom when I was 10 years old, when we took the cattle to the sale barn and we ended up in a decades-long fight with a committee similar to this in Louisiana. It's called the Municipal Planning Commission and the police jury. We started in on a decades-long fight to preserve the land surrounding our homestead because a developer had come in and was planning to put 152 homes on 52 acres right next to a working cattle farm. And so I remember telling my mom as a young child, the lawyer will save the farmer. Because I spent my developmental years in those meetings, speaking at those meetings, talking to those lawyers. I would go to the library and research land policy or legal issues because I wanted to save my farm. Because these people were telling me these houses were going to push out our farm. And so those things in that story is ultimately what led me to apply for this position and come to Louisa. So when I got to Louisa, I was very blessed to happen to run into Jim Rodell on my very first day in town before I even had an interview and really learn what this position was from a different perspective. So what is my position? I am the Land Development Agricultural Conservation Coordinator. So what does that mean? Because that's a long title with a lot of words, so what does it mean? My job is to evaluate, create, cultivate, and strengthen preservation tools that will allow the county to maintain its rural nature. So, from the day I talked to Jim to even today, I have been evaluating who is Louisa County. So as an outsider who had never been here, I flew into Charlottesville that day for the day before the interview and drove over and had great time. And since then, I've worked to meet with as many landowners as I can to see as many different sides of the agricultural production in the county and forestal production in the county. I've met with board members. I've met with Ag and Forestal Commission. I've met with some of you. And I've been able to look not only at the people, not only at the land, but also at the numbers. So tonight I'm going to give you an evaluation of what I believe is going on in Louisa County as someone who's only been here for a couple months. This map shows the land that is zoned agricultural in the county, both A1 and A2. As a whole, there are 310,750 acres in the county, which breaks down to 28,444 parcels. Outside of the growth area, so I'm going to talk to you primarily about outside of the growth area tonight. So outside the growth area, there are 256,502 acres, which is roughly 91.76% of the agricultural zoned land in the county. That breaks down to 15,960 parcels. So what's going on with growth in Louisa County? The monthly average of new homes in the county is 33. That breaks down to roughly 17 new homes outside of the growth area, with the majority of new homes coming into the county being outside of the growth area. Those 33 new homes are costing the county $150,000 to $180,000 in monthly service costs across education, law enforcement, fire and EMS, solid waste, and general government. So what does that look like on a yearly average? Yearly, there are 432 new homes coming into the county, or roughly 225 new homes outside the growth area. That is roughly $2 million in new annual service increase. Each home brings an annual shortfall to the county of $856.28, or a yearly amount of $370,303 for all 432 homes. What is the long-term impact on the county? By 2030, we'll have at current growth levels, we'll have 2160 new homes and 4320 new homes by 2035. So what does that mean on a big picture? So by 2035, the county will exceed 23,000 households and a population of over 50,000 people based on this current growth model. The power of preservation. So Louisa County has done a great job preserving working lands. When you go meet with state agencies, the thing I hear the most from state agricultural organizations and agencies is the AFD program in Louisa and how robust it truly is. So when we look at this map shows agricultural and forestal districts and conservation easements, which are the two programs that we do well in Louisa. They are the power of preservation here in the county. There are currently 14 separate agricultural and forestal districts encompassing 31,364 acres, which is roughly 10% of the land mass in the county. There are a total number of landowners, so there's 199, hopefully soon to be 200 landowners in AFDs, and 378 parcels. This is a map I'm sure you've seen before, but when we look at the conservation easements, which is the checkered line overlay, that is information that we receive from Department of Conservation. We have not historically tracked conservation easements at the county level, so we are working to get better data. This data is not 100% accurate as it is an overlay, and we can't completely tell where some of the lines are, but we do hope to have more accurate information on conservation easements and the number of conservation easements in the future. So as we move forward, we have to ask, and this is a question I ask every person I meet. Do you support land preservation? Does the county, does the public support land preservation? So I'm going to take you through some of the results from the comprehensive survey that we have thus far. These are the last results I received. So, public support for rural land preservation. Preservation importance. 94% of people say preserving farms and forest land is important. 92% support open space and working land preservation policies. 86% support concentrating growth in the designated growth areas. 77% support shifting development pressures away from rural ag areas. Growth management preferences. 82% want growth only where water, sewer, and roads already exist. 63% support mixed-use development in the growth areas. And 61% support taller buildings of 3 stories or more only in the growth areas. Financial tools for preservation. 83% support tax breaks on payments for landowners who do not develop farmland. And 68% support a small tax on new development to fund PDR programs. This looks at stronger rural protections and zoning practices, so we know that roughly half of the people in the county support changes to zoning and agricultural areas, as well as further responsibilities on developers. So what does the county value most, and what are our top concerns? Residents value most the rural character, the land and views, and the small town lifestyle here in Louisa County. They value the things that make Louisa, Louisa. What are the top concerns for the next 10 years? Overdevelopment, the loss of rural character, and traffic and road safety. So we can ask, that's a lot of data, right? Those are a lot of numbers I threw at you really quickly. So what's the clear direction from the community? We know that we want to protect working lands and rural viewsheds. We want to concentrate growth in those growth areas to keep the rest of the county rural. We want to reduce rural development pressures through larger lot sizes, CUPs, and setbacks. We want to strengthen preservation tools such as PDRs and TDRs to require development to offset its impacts. So how are we going to do that, you might ask? So tonight I'm going to talk to you about an approach, and please know that this approach is fluid. Okay, so what we're going to talk about tonight is very much in development. We're coming to you with ideas. We're going to also ask for feedback. So please be prepared for that. At the end of this portion of the talk, we will have a survey for each of you to fill out to return to me tonight, or you can email it. You can take pictures and email it back to me by Wednesday of next week if you take it home. So the preservation pyramid is an approach for slowing growth. Tier 1. Tier 1 is to slow residential growth to protect services and preserve the rural character of the county. So what does that look like? This would be an initial now to maybe 1 to 2 year period where we would look at adopting zoning updates to manage growth. We would reinforce and expand agricultural and forestal districts and land use participation to ensure that more rural acreage remains in a working lands and open space status. We would also conduct landowner education and outreach to promote renewals of multi-year AFDs, to educate on land use programs as well as conservation easements. We want to make sure that the farmers in Louisa County know the preservation tools that exist today. And we want to reduce the fiscal pressure immediately by slowing growth and curbing the $150,000 to $180,000 in monthly service increase by continued home construction. So tier 2, that's our kind of from now till our year maybe 1.5 to year 10. This is a termed PDR contract. So I'm not sure how familiar you are with PDR, so I'll kind of walk you through what a PDR is, and then we'll talk about how we term a PDR. So a PDR is a purchase of development right. It's basically where in a traditional sense, you would, the county would come to you and they'll say, we'll purchase your development right and then put your land into like a long-term perpetual conservation easement. We are actually looking to do that in a slightly different way. And I want you to think about this program as like a lease of development right. So the county would come to you and say, if you agree to enter into this contract with us for a period of 10 years, we will pay you an incentive program to preserve the land. So you're agreeing not to develop, and we will pay you an amount which will be created through a formula that we'll discuss in a few minutes to do that. So that's kind of what we're talking about when we talk about termed PDRs. So then now let's talk about what that could look like. So once growth slows and fiscal conditions stabilize, we can implement this program where a landowner would voluntarily, none of this is required, voluntarily restrict their own development right for a period of 6 to 10 years. We're hoping to do 10-year contracts in exchange for compensation. Funding sources are being discussed. That is ultimately something that we're looking at, all the different options there. But what would participation in the program look like? So membership in an agricultural and forestal district will be the threshold. So are you in an agricultural and forestal district? Great. Now you could potentially qualify for a contract. The contract will run with the land and bonds assessors and transfers, so the contract will be recorded and it will follow the land. And this provides a predictable short to medium term preservation range for people who maybe aren't so ready to jump into a conservation easement. Maybe they're like, we can preserve for 10 years and then we'll decide at that point if we're interested in a conservation easement, or maybe we want to preserve in medium terms for a succession of years. We don't know the length of the program. Initially, we would look at 10-year contracts with the plan that those contracts would end and then be renewed. Those are things that are still flexible and being discussed. We also plan to couple this tier with extensive landowner education on things like farm transition, trust and estate planning. How can we preserve the farm for the next generation? How can we ensure that those 10-year-olds in your life still have a farm to come home to, because it isn't a field of houses now. We believe that this tier converts fiscal savings and development contributions into direct payments to farmers and landowners, ensuring that the land remains economically viable and agriculturally productive. Tier 3 would be our long-term. We're talking, maybe 20 years or further out, and that would be conservation easements and strategic land acquisition. So our long-term goal is conservation easements. We're just looking for a way that would get us there, and knowing that oftentimes conservation easements are scary for some people, but maybe if we've preserved for 10, 20, 30 years under the tiered program, we would then be ready for a conservation easement. The strategic land acquisition would just simply be looking for maybe roadside lots that are available that could then be relined in different ways, and helping people do that for themselves. So this top tier solidifies the county's preservation framework, ensuring that its most valuable land remains permanently protected. This system turns growth management into rural investment. We're addressing zoning and AFD participation. We're reducing that drain of $150,000 to $180,000 in new monthly service costs, which is approximately $2 million annually. And the contracts will ultimately evolve into permanent conservation easements. We believe that the result is a closed loop system where controlled growth funds preservation, and preservation stabilizes the county's finance and identity. So as we move into this portion, I want you to think about a few things. We'll pass out a survey. Deborah has the surveys. So I want you to think about what parameters do you think are important when considering funding of this program? Do you think we should prioritize land size? So y'all talked tonight about some of you don't think that the smaller parcels are significant. So what parcel size do you think is significant? Would it be 10 acres, 25 acres, more acres? Should every AFD parcel receive a payment? How should the payments be formulated? Should there be a certain dollar amount per acre, a floor for all parcels, a percentage of acres with a cap? What do you think we should do? And then what other parameters would you like to see that were not discussed tonight? Please know that we're coming to you tonight with a lot. So you can, again, bring these back to me by next Wednesday. It would be extremely helpful if you want to have time to sit with this. This is a moving target. We don't have any like set in stone plans at this point. We're trying to get feedback from you all so that we can take it and build a program that will be successful for Louisa County. So that's all I have at this time, and I will stand for questions.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Quarles?
Ms. Breakville,
Yes, sir.
when you talk about these possible payments or compensation, is there anything that safeguards or guards against, say a person has 25 acres, but 15 of it is not really usable because it could be a water situation, runoff, or anything like that. So they're actually farming 10 or 12 acres or so, but the rest of that parcel is really no good. So then the county gets into preserving and making a payment toward them on the total amount, but then some of it's not useful anyway.
So we're applying this under the Open Space Land Act. So I would argue that all of that land is worthy to be preserved. They would be able to join an agricultural and forestal district for that parcel, and so I would argue that even though the land isn't currently being used for production, that under the Open Space Land Act, that the money designated for PDR payments could still be used in that situation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Barlow?
I think you and I have talked about this a little bit. When you get to establish minimum acreages, right now, I know a lot of farmers that have multiple parcels that are small parcels, but they're actively being farmed.
Mm-hmm.
So well, for example, I've got a 3-acre parcel that I farm. And it's put in with the rest of it, but it's separated by roads, so I can't add it to another parcel or anything. So if you made the acreage minimum 5 acres, then that parcel would be excluded. And it's things like that. There's an awful lot of things you have to think about. There are a lot of small acreage parcels that are being farmed, and what you think about a parcel being large enough to farm, but there are applications where that parcel cannot be added into another parcel. It's being farmed, but then if you put an acreage that is below, you say you make 5 acres the minimum, then you have excluded a parcel like that. And there are a lot of those parcels in the county that are actively being farmed.
So
Well, just point of clarification, when you're talking about that 3.3 acre parcel, are you talking about the potential PDR payments, or were you talking about the zoning changes?
Either one.
Well, so just point of clarification with the zoning changes about minimum lot sizes. I'll say the minimum lot sizes in general for divisions or subdivisions or things, that would probably maintain the same, but I think we would establish some minimum acreage for particular uses. So like residential uses, there'd need to be a threshold that, acreage needed to be this acreage or more if you wanted to build a home by right. So when we talk about zoning changes that way, that is more in line with what we're talking about, help preserve the rural nature, have a little bit bigger lot sizes for residential. And then the same conversation you had about like the PDR payments, that's part of the amount that we've gone back and forth of where does every AFD parcel get a little bit, and then we do proportional for all those conversations have been going, and we said between Ag Forestral, y'all, and the board, let's get the feedback and try and figure out where that middle ground is with y'all, and that can be our starting point, because we've gone around and around in circles about where it needs to be and what would be the best option, because there's so many parcels like that and then alternatives that would be helpful to do.
The reason I asked that question there is I wouldn't know how to fill this out without knowing, in other words, if I say that 5 acres is the minimum acreage, then you have 1.5 acre parcels, 3 acre parcels that are being, when they're used as a whole, as part of the farm, they would be excluded from being able to qualify for the,
So I will say there are, just for context, there are 97 parcels currently in AFDs that are under 10 acres. So just to have that context. So he is correct that there are a lot of small parcels currently being farmed currently in agricultural and forestal districts.
And then the other thing I will say is with the PDR payments, this would be per parcel. So if you have an individual that's got 4 parcels in their assemblage or AFD that they're working, if there was, $250 was the minimum per parcel, they would get that per parcel. So if there's 4, they would get that plus whatever the variable payment is. So when you're looking at this about what should the minimum acreage be, perfect example. So let's say it's 5 acres, you might lose that 3.3 acre parcel that you wouldn't be able to get paid for. But if you had 3 other parcels that were in the assemblage, they could get a higher portion of payment.
there are many active farms in Louisiana County that have multiple parcels that are small, but they're farming all of them. You just go from field to field.
And that's the only reason why this is what we went round and round with, should every parcel get a floor, and then we budget for that, and then account for the difference, and then your percentage of, in the AFD, you'd get, price per acre, and if you had 100, you'd get more than somebody that only hit 27, but that's the conversation that we've been going round and round about, and that's literally the reason why we brought this to y'all, is because there's several different ways we can go, and some people might get left out that we don't want to leave out, but we also may want to prioritize the larger parcels, because the larger parcels that we get included and compensated, you may get more preservation, so more bang for your buck. And so that's the balance that we're trying to strike here.
So if you have a farmer or I'll say a landowner that farms part of their parcel and rents part of the parcel out, in that case, I guess or owns a parcel and rents all the parcel out, the PDR payments would be directed towards the landowner and not the tenant farmer.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Goodwin.
thank you. I've got 2 questions. The first one's, I think, fairly simple. Can somebody email me that survey so that I can fill it out and get it back?
We'll have somebody bring it by the house.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions about content or?
Yes, you all got close to it. I want to make sure that I'm clear. We have a lot of land in this county that a parcel will have a landowner and will have, according to the USDA, an operator. Does this at all impact the relationship between landowners and operators?
No, sir, I don't believe that it does. The the contract will be between the county and the landowner, and it will be recorded with the deed. So it would bind the landowner, and ultimately it would be up to the landowner to ensure that his tenant didn't develop the property in violation of the contract.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, thank you. These payments that you speak of, what is the generator or the, where's that money coming from?
So yeah, there's several different funding opportunities that are out there. So we haven't come up with a solid option as of right now. Just to be honest with you, that there's a couple options that we still are vetting out. And it might be a blend of 3 or 4 different options, but as of right now, we can't tell you the exact funding source.
Okay.
I will say we are leaving no stone unturned with all of this, as we were directed to do by the chairman of the board.
Mr. Chairman, if you would, the PDR is purchase of development rights. So there's nothing attributed in this to farming. You're just,
So the legal authority for it is under the Open Space Land Act.
okay.
So it's not necessarily directly only for farmers. It's for land that qualifies under the Open Space Land Act, which does include agricultural land.
Very good, thank
So
you.
we actually are, like, any land that would be eligible, we've determined at the county level that any land that would be eligible for an AFD would be eligible for an incentive payment based on the criteria and parameters that are part of the contract.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, thanks, sir.
Further questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Dickerson.
I'm thinking of another locality that had a challenge. So to qualify for the payment, you'd have to be in an AFD.
That is correct.
So a golf course can't be in an AFD, so it wouldn't qualify.
It would not.
And that, so that's one of the other items that we've been working on too, is some terms of the contract. So as we move through this, there are other things that we've been talking about. So like what zoning definitions would be allowed. So even if you're in an A1 district in an AFD, the contract can still restrict uses. So you may have by right that you could do all these certain things, but then the contract language could actually also address some of those uses or agritourism or things like that. So that in the contract, we promote agritourism and working lands, but outside of that, the contract wouldn't support it. So then they would have to make the decision if the compensation was worth trying to do something with their property that may be a little bit more, develop it in a way that the contract didn't deem necessary or appropriate.
Mr. Quarles.
So you're saying, thank you, Mr. Chair. So you're saying that basically, entering that contract, it could nullify some of the by right uses.
A contract term, that's essentially what would happen, is they would enter into the Ag Forestry District, and then to get the PDR payments through the Open Space Land Act, which is the intent to preserve rural property, that with the intent of the county, though, not only do we want to preserve the rural nature of the county, but we also want to expand the agritourism and the agricultural type businesses in the community, that it would be in the contract that these parameters would be able to be utilized.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Quarles.
Are there any options as to voiding that contract, or what would be the exclusions that would?
I mean, so in any contract, it'd be up to the Board of Supervisors and the individual. There'd be a normal language for termination, a set period that they'd want to, but it'd have to be mutual agreement between the property owner and the board once the contract was entered into.
Understand, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brooks.
just confirm, to qualify for this, you'd have to be in the Ag Forest District.
That is correct.
That's like
That's
that-
baseline.
That's
yeah,
baseline.
what we've agreed
Coming out the
upon.
ground, you gotta start here before you come talk to us.
Bingo.
Yes.
And the management of this would be quite an undertaking of keeping up with payments, parcels, people.
We don't think it'll be too difficult. We think it is a manageable system depending on how it is put into play. It would fall under my role as well as assistance from other people in the county. But we don't believe that it's too difficult to do. It will be a challenge, but all good things are. And we want to preserve the rural nature of Louisa County.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Barlow?
I think I understood you just to say, if you have a farmer out there that is not ready to put their land in an ag forestal district, you'd have to do that, because there's an awful lot of the land out here that's currently being farmed that's not in the ag forestal district.
So our metrics that we're looking at for determining success of our program is number of acres in an ag forestal district, numbers of acres in land use, and numbers of acres in conservation easements compared to number of acres developed. And so we've chosen to take the path that ag forestal districts would provide a baseline, as it is already a substantial means of conservation in the county, with 10% of the county being an agricultural and forestal district. And to be honest, it's one of the things that Louisa is known for because of that and because of the preservation culture that we already have here. So we want to just continue to grow what we already do so well.
And then, but getting to Commissioner Painting's point about what's the benefit of being in an AFD, we feel that if we can work this incentives through the AFD is a concept that a lot of people are aware of. Maybe not all the ins and outs, but they've heard of them and they're aware of them, and the signs in the county. So to strengthen that position, and when the question is, well, what's the benefit of being in an AFD, and we can start talking about the incentive programs and the benefits that they get for joining, our hope is that we can expand that involvement in the AFD, because it's already, instead of a totally new program, it's just building on something that we already have successful in the county.
I will say, we have had feedback from state agencies that are extremely interested in what we are doing. I had a meeting a couple weeks ago with Department of Forestry, and they're actually looking at following Louisa as a test case, as well as Virginia Tech is planning to follow us as a test case. Lease of development rights have not been done in Virginia in this way. A termed PDR, as we're calling it. So this would be the first program in the state, and I know the state of Virginia, as well as this has been discussed with the governor's staff as well, that they are watching us and they're very excited about the potential for taking a model in Louisa and taking it to other localities in the state.
Mr. Brooks?
Back to the Ag Forest District and the ordinance we looked at tonight, and for all the discussion we had as described by Jim, the murkiness of it. We need to streamline our requirements to...
That is a Virginia state code. We can't amend that.
But have it our process to look at, I'm just thinking that all the rezonings or what we had to go through tonight to put it in an ag forest district, got to come to the planning commission, the board. You're gonna get a flood of requests all at one time. How are we gonna handle that situation?
Benefit is if we have more people in the ag forestry district, the 1 mile limit shouldn't be an issue. So hopefully we get to that point where we can get to the mile no problem, and that's how we go through it. Yes, there's going to be a surge, and that's the hope, because a surge means that's a substantial amount of preservation.
That's what you're looking for.
And that's what we're looking for. So
and you're ready to handle it.
I am. I'm excited.
All right. I can tell. Thank you.
Ms. Brakefield, just on your survey, I have to, just reading through it, I need to just understand a couple of phrases, just
Yes,
not clear to me. This is in questions 5 and 7. So,
Okay.
question 5, for distributing funding, which payment model do you believe is most fair and effective? Flat per acre amount, I understand that. Percentage of total acres preserved. So I don't understand what is acres preserved. If you're putting a parcel in, it's acres you're preserving. So what's...
So just to make the math easy, if we had 100 acres total in the AFD, and you had 10 of the 100 acres, if we had $100 to disperse, you got the $10 because you have 10% of the total acreage preserved. So essentially you would take the funding allotment or allocation that we're able to do, and then divide that by the percentage of total acres preserved.
I see.
There's a,
I see.
you know,
Yes,
should we
yes.
account for conservation easement?
Yep.
Should it only be the ag forestral? And then it's what's your if you're 2% of the total AFD, do you get 2% of the funding allocation for those PDRs? Or, like when we were talking about, should everybody get $250? And then once that's all paid out, then we go to, now the funding allocation is less, that 250, then the percentage. So that's kind of what we're figuring, like this way, everybody gets a little bit, but then if you have more land, you get a little bit better proportion. Or we just say there's no cap, it's just based on your percentage of the overall AFD acreage. So
Yes, I get
it's just trying to figure out a fair way to, like I said, balance it out. If you have more land, you should get more. But if you have, you know, a workable land that's just not big acreage, if there's no minimum, you know, it could be very insignificant because the percentage is just so low over the overall AFD savings.
Yeah.
And then this is just the funding mechanism and calculations we would need to so
Right.
these terms are 10 years, so calculating that out and accounting for budget and everything.
Right, I get it, thank you. Any other questions?
And then 7 is essentially the same
Yeah,
concept.
exactly. All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Breakville. So, all right, so homework assignment, either turn it in today or get it in by Wednesday.
And you can bring it up to the county office, or you all have my card. If you want to scan it or shoot pictures of it and email it to me, you can turn it in that way as well.
Very good. Thank you. All right, next up under discussion is the added item for fee schedule discussion. So, Ms. Buckler.
Chairman and members of the Planning Commission, just to briefly recap what we talked about in the work session, there have been several instances recently where county administration has received requests for replacement or maintenance of road and street signs. And in looking through the ordinance and talking about this with several different departments, including county administration, community development, and fire and EMS, we realized that the language in the ordinance under Chapter 64, which was adopted when the road naming and E911 system was put in place in the 90s, is a little outdated, so there's a couple of amendments in that section. We also included language that would clarify that the county is going to be responsible for replacing the road signs, because there was no language that covered replacement or for damaged or missing road signs. And when we took this to the board, it was the consensus of the board that it was important that the road signs be maintained for emergency service access and that sort of thing. And currently, the signs are done by fire and EMS, and they include that in their budget. But each sign is approximately $270 a piece. And so we were talking about ways that we could help offset those costs because of new development, the amount of homes, the new roads that are being put in, or private lanes and that sort of thing. So the discussion went to the fee schedule for community development and development fees associated with new addressing of parcels when they're created, when homes are built, because that is an item that is added to the GIS. There's fees for the GIS maintenance. We talked about new parcels that are created, increasing what we currently charge for those, new road digitization, increasing that cost, new addresses that are assigned, and then to also charge up front to the developer the road sign cost that is currently in place, rather than fire and EMS having to try to track down the developer and get those funds from them later. We also increased some of the special project fees for GIS, and these are all ways to help offset the cost of the replacement road and street signs. So for the Planning Commission, the amendments to Chapter 64 would only go through the Board of Supervisors, but it's all part of the discussion and the reasoning behind the proposed amendments to the fee schedule. And the intent tonight was just to bring it to you all, to make you aware of what we were looking at. But if you are open to going ahead and scheduling the public hearing for January rather than having another work session, we are open to whatever the Planning Commission desire is.
So do we heard this in the work session. Do we have any further comments on it now? And in that case, I think, Ms. Smith, we have to have a motion to put this in.
That's correct.
So then the chair would entertain a motion to add this to the agenda for January.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to add this item to the agenda as a public hearing for the January 2026 meeting. Any further discussion? Ms. Johnson, we have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Brooks? Yes. Mr. Painting?
Yes.
Mr. Dissley?
Yes.
Mr. Dickerson?
Yes.
Mr. Quarles?
Sure.
Mr. Goodwin?
Yes.
Mr. Percy?
Yes.
Very well. Motion passes. We'll have that in as a public hearing in January. Next up, that completes the discussion items. So next up is reports. Ms. Buckler, do we have any reports for December?
Really, the only thing that I had thought about bringing up, Mr. Kuhn covered with all the comp plan information earlier in the meeting, so I don't have anything else to add, except Merry Christmas.
Very good. Then if there are no other announcements,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brooks,
I would like to make a little bid y'all farewell.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I think so.
I didn't want to let you do that. I was trying to close the meeting. but-
John said he'd double your price.
Tommy, you had one job. One job.
But I wanted to thank y'all for serving with y'all over the years. It's been a pleasure and a privilege. And that's it, past commissioners and the ones that I sat with today. So thank y'all. And to staff, thank y'all for the support and help for me over the years and trying to understand what I'm asking you. That's no easy task. And thank you, Mr. Barlow, for the appointment. And I'd like to make the motion to adjourn, if I can. There it is.
You may. Do we have a second?
Second.
We are adjourned.
I don't agree with that part of you leaving, but
Motion was to adjourn, not to accept his resignation.
drawing if I